Today's guest isn't just in the business of connections, he's a composer of them. David Homan has worked with family offices, impact investors, founders, nonprofits, and creatives, helping them build intentional high trust relationships that actually move the needle. He's the co-founder and CEO of Orchestrated Connecting, where over 2,000 super connectors collaborate across industries, from venture capital to social justice, mental health to climate change. He's incubated a family film company with the Dalio family office. He ran a foundation that survived the Bernie Madoff fiasco. And get this, he's also a classical composer with 7 albums to his name. So in short, he's someone that sees life as a symphony and connection as the score. So welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you, Ahmad. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
No, I'm like I said before, I've been researching you. Ever since you sent me a message on LinkedIn, and there was something watching your videos that really struck me. You said you knew everyone, but they didn't know each other. And when did this happen?
So, when you live in New York, everything swirls around. It's an amazing city of opportunity. And in that, you can run into people who you went to high school with. You can run into all these different circles. And as you build what I call that ecosystem, what ends up happening invariably is you assume that everyone you're connected to, especially those in my case, this example that you love and trust, you just assume that they know each other the way you know them. So I'd have karaoke birthday parties, or one birthday party was a beer and cheese tasting because I didn't want wine, family office conferences, arts gatherings, whatever it might be. And I constantly found myself surprised going, friend so-and-so, you are a Jordanian in the investment space with climate change. And this is my friend who's a Jordanian in the investment space in climate change. How come you don't know each other? You were at my beer and cheese tasting party. And I realized that although I had built an intentional network around me, I had failed to convey each of those friends and colleagues to each other. So I wanted to figure out, and what I've built, which is what I call orchestrated connecting, was a system to solve that, basically so I can get out of the way and have the right people begin new relationships at the speed of trust.
And that word is so special, trust. How do you build that with people that don't know each other, that you know, but how do you know that they're going to like each other, trust each other, and gain value from knowing each other?
There are a couple traits that I look for. And now that I have a book coming out this August around orchestrating connections, I've now put it all down because there was a science to it, but it's science based on soft skills we don't necessarily value till we make them the primary thing we look for. So every conversation, I look to see if somebody is willing to be curious and willing to be vulnerable. If you start with that, you get past the surface, and that's how you build trust. You cement that trust by offering to help people or them help you. And that action you take that then you express gratitude and honor from creates trust. And it's that combination of looking for people who are willing to think beyond themselves, willing to model that behavior to help somebody they've just met, and then both of you being willing to take that spirit of generosity and to honor and to respect it. And it is a simple combination, but also very profound because very few people do it. We spend most of our time meeting people who are really, really stoked that they get to tell us about themselves. They feel really good. They walk away and they're forgotten.
As you were talking, I couldn't help but think of how composing and orchestrating has impacted the way that you're composing and orchestrating, connecting with people. Is this the same? Like, how much parallelism is there? You look at how violins are going to work with the piano and work with percussion and work with the orchestra. How is that translating? Like, how much is it translating from there to connecting with people?
So I won't lie, right? I will say part of the reason I built my world around music was I wanted someone to finally listen. Because you learn as a classical composer that when you get to 60, they celebrate you for still doing it. Not being good. I have had 7 albums come out. I have a massive interconnected network. Everyone's so excited I'm a composer. That's it. They're excited I'm a composer. They don't actually download the music or listen. But when I do events like the video you're referring to, where I record myself playing in front of people, I knew at least 48 souls in that room where I recorded, which is on my homepage video, or all listening. I mean, they had to. They also paid because they wanted to be there, respect me, but they also had to. And once they sat in that moment, they had this choice, Ahmad. They had a choice to be there and to embrace it collectively, or to interrupt it. And when I think about the real power of music, and I'll get into some of like the violin sections and the symphony and all of that, the way you see this, by choosing to do something collectively together for which your silence and then your action of engagement from it, that's what you want out of community engagement. You want people to find a resonance, and from finding that resonance to go in all the different ways that should happen from interaction. So if everyone is the composer of their life and the conductor of that life as a symphony, so to speak, you have to do a lot of self-work to get there. You can't just be the center because you were born as the center. You have to really understand, as per those soft skills I mentioned, the work it takes to become that concert violinist, to be part of the string section, the brass, the winds, whatever it might be. And everyone in your life has a different moment for how they could be part of that orchestra. There are people who come and go, like in orchestral terms, a timpani will just have pounding, amazing resonance at the right moment, but it can't be constant. There's one friend who years and years in the orchestra world plays the triangle. And everyone who knows the music waits for that moment, but that was the only moment that person for me was in my life, but they were instrumental, pun intended, for it. Then there are those people that they're the same section as you. My favorite instrument isn't piano, which I play, it's the cello. And so there are people that are just constant, beautiful, wide-ranging voices in my life, and I collect and I connect them to each other, and we are more in sync with each other. But it doesn't mean they're the most helpful for what I have to do next. Sometimes it's that other friend's friend who sees the resonance and matches it to somebody else's orchestra. And that's the real concept. Because a piece of music can go to place and sound wholly different with the same notes because the intention is different. And so when you take that idea of matching resonance, what happens when we have a world, hopefully in the future, where everything is more intentional and purposeful, and that resonance and what we look for is based on how people show up, doing what they say, and working to do something greater than their own wants or desires? And that, when you find beauty in that, is the same way I hope people might find beauty in the music I compose.
I think it's genius. You know, this analogy of you being part of everybody thinks about the influencer, but the ultimate influencer is the conductor. They don't play any instrument, yet they look at how others are working and the perfect timing for the triangle and the perfect timing for percussion and where's the violins going to come in. This is what you're doing with people and showing them how if you're part of the cellists, you need to work with the percussion at some point, or the melody needs to work. Like it's a very, very powerful analogy that you're using. I applaud you because I actually think it's genius. Most people think because someone is different from us, they don't add value, or, oh, look at the simple triangle, that's not going to add value to me. But really, when in an orchestra, it might have like a second of time, and without that second being filled with that little ding, the music isn't alive as it should be. So
yeah, I mean, not only do you totally get it right, but you think about how we view the relationships in our lives, and we think the people most trusted to us are going to be the most helpful. And in the end, that's not what happens. I think we're all given maybe 5 or 6 chances in our life to meet the person who then becomes the introducer to a catalyst of what should have happened in your life. And if we're not ready for it, and we don't have people understand how we're, quote, playing in that, we miss that opportunity. And so how you show up for that How do you demonstrate your resonance and your charisma and your character to know that somebody else can take that one moment, right? To keep with this triangle image, and just that one note at that one time sends you on a whole nother ripple of relationships. The world is built on this. We just have never valued it, even though I challenge anyone to think of something that happened in their lives that wasn't because of an introduction or an opportunity created by somebody else.
And I don't know if it's like what 100% what you say that we don't value it. I think we've cocooned ourselves in modern days in the past post-COVID world where we are algorithm centric. Like whatever we if we are a right supporter or a left supporter, or if we like one thing or the other, we're only fed the same thing, and then we talk to the same people, and then we don't leave that bubble. It's like we're only between cellists and we don't get out of it. But what you're doing is really bringing what humanity was built on, like you said, through introduction and also through lessons. Like I remember 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, when I was a kid, that it was a common known thing that the doorman can teach you something, that the taxi driver has an interesting conversation. He can tell you a good story. Don't judge people by their cover. Whereas today, because we have so much information, we're like, if this person doesn't have X amount, like I'm not even gonna waste my time talking to them. So I think I love how profound the image is, and how you're pushing people to think, everybody has a space in our life, and the most unexpected, and I want to hear a story of the most unexpected person bringing the most amount of value to someone else.
Yeah. So let me address a little bit of the history first, just to give it a little context, right? So we all evolved in tribal societies. Tribes created conformity to have survival, religious belief, heritage, ethnicity, and we are in an endless battle in this world currently, endless wars over which tribe should be dominant. Except for now, we're connected globally from degrees to degrees to billions of people who, in my understanding of the way polls and the way the planet works, no one wants to sit there with the fear that their kid can't get an education or might be killed tomorrow. Everyone wants to have that dream, not just what was years ago the American dream. Like, they want security and prosperity and love and family. And I've not met a single person from any culture who doesn't want the same thing. So we're taught now that we're all so polarized and different, yet there's one common core of humanity that people actually strive for. It's the way power has worked on this planet that has pulled on those strings of tribe. And power is what makes our current political environments globally challenging. Power is what makes me, as a proud Jew, talk to my friends who are proud Muslims to see how Ramadan was for them. And that's not because all people should hate each other. We're taught that because it's easier for the people who have power to divide us that way, the same way it's easier for technology to separate us to better monetize. But neither of those things are what I would call a shared humanity. Those things everyone essentially agrees on. And so when I think about this with like the work that I do and the way I've shaped this, we have to move away from this idea of our tribe being the people who look like us and think like us. And we have to look then as what would be, I think, deemed better a purposeful community. Because when you take innovation on this planet, it never happened because one culture or one group stayed isolated and solved a problem. Mathematics, the printing press, Google, blood transfusion, anything that's an innovation in this world happened from somebody who was generally exploring a different culture, a refugee or an immigrant in another world who saw something differently, saw because of that innovation, and built something we now take as commonplace that never, ever came from homogeny.
So powerful. So powerful. And I 100% agree. It's the more diversity will bring the truth. If you're a truth seeker, you need to see every side. You cannot see the same side 100 times and think you know the truth. What happened? How did you start this? Okay, now we have the concept down. We know the problem. I think, honestly, I think it's a genius analogy of, and I have so many questions about how you listen. Do you listen to people differently because you are a composer? But how did you start this? Okay, now you found the problem. What did you do next?
So the answer is I made a lot of mistakes. This might have evolved into something you might respect and admire. It didn't start that way. It wasn't just that origin story of like seeing all the people that needed to be connected, right? Like I got to New York and I knew almost no one. And my brother's high school friend made an intro for me that then resulted in another intro that helped me build what my whole career is now. And my mom's best friend from childhood, it was sort of like my adopted grandmother, called her friend in New York, who became my adopted grandmother. And the ripples of that, those two people have built everything I have in this life. And so when I think about that, I failed to understand that. That was failure number one. Then I started to meet all these people and connect differently. I failed to understand it was different because I thought I was just networking the way other people network. And then I was running an incredible organization. I'd run it for a very long time and I wanted to see what was more out there. I failed to find another job. And I had to look really deep at what was the problem I was creating because I couldn't sit around blaming all these other people for my problems. And this was the problem, right? Going back to why I say relationship value is not valued. I had given out a huge amount to this world, to friends, people I met, introductions, my time, insight, strategy, whatever it might be. But I had never demonstrated to them that was a value I was giving. I just assumed they would value it back. That was the biggest failure that I had in everything that I did. Until I realized when I demonstrated the value of what I was doing in terms of relationships, I then gained the trust and respect to build more of that. And then I realized all those people that I had failed to connect with each other were like that because I had sought out people like me. They just happened to be a certain archetype that didn't fit the you musician in New York. Are you a guy in finance? Are you a marketing guy? Because your dad was a marketing guy. We don't have to follow those paths, but how we evolve as a humanity became this deep understanding of trying to figure out who did I attract and why did, when I spoke to them, why did they hear something bigger than what I was saying and what they were doing? And that's what became my orchestrated connecting community, became the book coming out, became the startup I have launching this spring into summer. It became this life's purpose of trying to find how to do two things. And neither of these are sophisticated, even though you and other people listening might think I'm very eloquent. It was two things. How do I get out of the way to get the right people in front of each other? And can I build the most sophisticated no assholes policy so my world is intentional with everyone around me? And I got out of the way by bringing people together and then walking out of those conversations. And I built a policy based on 3 tenets that is for everyone in my community and network, which is I would want to describe everyone I know and trust as action-oriented, as a natural giver. And the final one was the kicker that made my network what it is. Would I leave my children with you? And you have to ask that question for everyone you refer into my network, everyone you engage with outside of it. And if they don't pass that test, don't connect with them in this context. That was the code that became the people I had searched for and then found. That was my answer to finding this resonance and building not just my life, quote unquote, as a symphony, but everyone around me with me.
With your first point of getting people together and then leaving that void, allowing them to shine and providing that space. There's a beautiful quote like, the simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Like you're literally not doing anything. How did you find that? Was it because it doesn't it's counterintuitive. It's like, when you put two people together, or let's say if you're matchmaking romantically, or you're like, oh, I have a guy and a girl and she's very pretty, he's very successful, blah blah. You have to do all this stuff, or I think our intuition is that you have to do it. Did you learn this leave them by themselves in a by a mistake as well, or was it more intentional?
Everything's a mistake. So here's that story, right? In college, I wrote a string quartet. It was based on Einstein's theory of relativity and this incredible book by Alan Lightman called Einstein's Dreams. And I composed that quartet, which at some point I will probably re-record as my next album. And my family, just to be clear, when I create albums, we call them coasters because they work really well to put your drinks on.
It's hilarious.
It
You're
is a
too humble,
classical
but
world.
I heard you play. It is top notch. It's
Thank
not
you.
a coaster.
But it still might be. You just might have it on your phone, then put the CD on to rest your drink. So here's what happened, right? I lived in fear of my incredible father standing up and applauding too soon at everything I had performed because he wanted to champion me. But I said to him, I call him Sid because years ago he was hard of hearing. So if you called him Dad, he never responded. So for me, he's always been Sid. I was like, Sid, you cannot applaud first when this piece is finished. It was performed, and this has happened almost every performance it's had. And I sat there in this painful silence for almost 2 minutes till people stood up to applaud. I had sent them on such an inner journey with this work, which is about the dream state and the way time changes, that they were so in their world, they didn't feel the etiquette to stand and applaud to make me feel good. They had to finish that journey for themselves. So the most meaningful 2 minutes for those people, I did not compose, nor did I control. And that's what taught me what getting out of the way means. You and I could have an incredible interview and resonate with people, and it's what they say to somebody else, not after, while listening to us, that actually matters more than any insight we might have in talking with each other. Because how they process this and came up with their own thought, we can't control. We can only guide, we can orchestrate. And when you realize you cannot have that control over anyone else, you have to give up the idea you can force an outcome. You can only create an opportunity for that outcome to exist.
I'm seriously so amazed because it's the parallelism is so profound of the void causes the emotion, it brings your own thoughts, and that's what really matters. And it's like what you're saying, when you put two people together, you let them talk, you let them express themselves. And going a little bit on a tangent, because I do want to touch on the three pillars that you just mentioned, but going on a tangent, you have a very strong knowledge of how you frame yourself and how you should reframe yourself and pitch yourself a little bit better. Because I think most of us will frame ourselves based on what we do. And like you said, sometimes we're a composer that also does something else, and then you're like, you don't fit anywhere. What's your technique? What are your thoughts on that? How should people, like people that are listening, how should they start thinking about reframing how they pitch themselves?
So we're live. So let's do that with you. Okay.
Let's do it.
Can you tell me in a minute your passion, why you built this podcast?
I love meeting people. I'm one of the most curious people I know. So I'm always asking questions, and I do it selfishly because I get to talk to incredible people that if I asked them for a coffee, they wouldn't talk to me. But if I ask them for a podcast, they come, and then I can ask questions that I can actually ask. Where when we do it on a coffee and I ask you like, what are your views on investing? They'll be like, wow, this guy is so intense. Why was he asking me? So it's like the right social framework to learn from people. I just enjoy it every second, and everybody gives me more.
Absolutely. I love the way you shared that. So thank you. It is strategic. It's also useful in the framing of it. So then what happens when that's amplified? When you have all this curiosity now documented to share, what's the greater goal from just your curiosity into everyone you've picked so far and in the future for the Founders Forum?
I have a very big story that happened to me when I went to the Middle East a few years ago, where I noticed the difference between perception and my perspective. And my perspective was always based on like the cellist, the people around me, everyone was the same. But when I went to the Middle East, I noticed how different everybody looked at the world. So the more I fill that curiosity void, the better I can understand people and the better decisions I can make in my life.
But not just you, anyone who's listening
Exactly, yeah.
both sees your growth and development, but also the different perspectives from the people you meet.
Absolutely. And there's a big thing too where people that watch the podcast, sometimes I've had many messages that say, "Hey, can I come on it? Can I
Okay.
also talk? Can I, and then I get to meet more people." So it's not only helping them there, but then it's also them wanting to be part of it. So it's attracting people that I want to speak to.
So to just focus on those two parts till we get to the third, which is the secret, right? I call this the impact ask. Everyone should be able, through hard work, to be clear, to say within a minute what your passion is. You should take 2 minutes to talk about how that's amplified, because the greater vision than your own needs lets people see their shoes and their paths with you. That's part of this hack. Final part, what are the type of connections you need to move what you're doing forward?
So what I do is I help family offices and high net worth investors allocate money into real estate. So as I meet more people that have that type of wealth and reach, we already establish a connection. That connection becomes then a possibility of having a conversation, and that conversation leads to allocation, leads to connections, leads to opportunity, leads to returns, leads to more freedom.
So, in the type of relationships, active family offices, allocators, either with a real estate focus or who have friends who have that focus. So, as you build a larger trusted network by being curious with them, they can share their insights. People can work with them, get a sense of their character, and build a more intentional focus of who's investing or co investing with the people you work with.
Absolutely.
So, right, coming into this, people might think, all right, here's this great curious guy. You can look him up. Here's the article he wrote on Forbes. Here's some of the stuff he's done. But when you can say it so clearly, this is my mission and my goal. I'm curious about this, but my focus in this is building relationships in a very private space where the insights should be shared, and therefore then the opportunities could be shared from it. That creates an impact ask that anyone or their mother across a kitchen table could share. And the more people are able to have other people be their champions or advocates from that, right? The same way I said, I can't control what happens in the silence after my music. I can just create the setup for it. I can't control with my global network the outcomes that come from everyone meeting each other. I can just create the system for it, for which I have been absolutely adamant. You have to elevate impact in this world however you see it, meaning you have to connect with others to help other people. And then you have to, and my term is honoring the chain of connections. You have to share back the entire chain that built the community for a result that happened for you or somebody you were helping. And so the more you can make that clear, the more you have that moment in connecting with people to resonate and have them remember you. Very few people do this well. The most successful people all have it.
And first of all, thank you for doing it live, because now I can rewatch it 10 times until I can do it. Like you said, the most successful people know these. It's foundational to frame and reframe and pitch yourself in that clear manner. And people who are listening, you could do it. Just ask yourselves these same questions, use a friend, because I think it's so important the more successful you are, I find, is when you know yourself clearly or more clear.
So I'll qualify that just because we are in and around the world, both of us, of extraordinarily prominent and wealthy people. There are two types. There are the types that always seek to prove themselves more. They have not mastered what is actually a purposeful value in their life, if that's their type. And then there are the types who are the ones we all look up to for their wealth, for their success, for their fame. Almost all of those people I've met are inherently humble, because the value system which they led to generate that wealth or maintain that wealth, talking particularly in the family office, exited founder world, all of this, I've not met a single person I respect who didn't literally not care about the success. They cared about loving the journey to get there, the lessons they learned, and how they're going to work with or help others or invest in others from that success. And that's the difference of people who are purposeful and intentional and those that are not. And I do believe that if we were all actually purposeful and intentional, it would be impossible for us to all act selfish at the same time, which is, for me, the greatest problem with the power imbalances in this world, are people who are fine being selfish, being takers, saying, well, I deserve everything coming to me because of how great I am. I don't really like to talk to those people. I wouldn't leave my kids with those people. But there's millions or billions of them, who knows, who would rather maintain what they believe their value is than help somebody else with a pittance of that. And that for me goes against what I believe human nature should be.
And that's a beautiful segue into the pillars. Coincidentally, in our family, we say, are we a giver or are we a taker? Do we believe and we only invite people to our home who are givers? And it's such a powerful thing because when you can tell in a second who's a taker and who's a giver, and you said should. The word should is there. And I believe that there is acceptance and opening and you have to be tolerant, blah blah blah. But why were you, or how did you define these pillars so clearly? And how do you deal with the takers, the people that you wouldn't leave with your kids, the people that are like, oh no, this is the superstar of the superstar. He should be in your community. You're like, well, he doesn't fit these values, these pillars. Why these pillars, and how do you enforce them?
So I have a very sophisticated system that makes everything eventually be very, very simple.
Love it.
So the element of risk within one's network or community is never really enforced. For me, it's absolutely enforced. So practically, right? We're recording this on a day where I have an event for my community in New York tonight. I didn't just dress up for you, I dressed up for the event, but I also wore one of the 2 shirts that wasn't needing to be dry cleaned in my closet, so everyone gets whatever benefit this blue and white checkered shirt is. If you buy a ticket to my event being invited in as that term of an action-oriented, high-integrity giver, and you don't show and you don't tell me why you didn't show, you don't get to come back. It's a rule. It's there in the invite. It's there when you buy the ticket. It's there with the reminders, because I believe that if you're going to come to something, come to it fully. And if something happens, like a kid gets sick or a dog gets sick or whatever it might be, or a kid and a dog, which one of my friends had, who's coming to my event tonight from missing the last one. And it wasn't because of the kid and the dog. It was just separate crises that happened simultaneously on a Tuesday. Show up to tell me, right? Like just be respectful and say, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. If you can't do it in the moment because things are hard, write a day later and just say, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it. Here's what happened. It doesn't cost that much to be human, but it costs a lot to not be. So I judge everything on actions. I don't care about words. If somebody says they loved hearing me, they love everything I stand for, and they still don't give philanthropically or help other people, I don't care what they think of me. I only care about the action they take from something maybe I could spur more people to do. So my network, it's very, very simple. It's a network of connection. Do you connect people? Do people respect and honor that? Do I hear about it? If all I hear, right, if you were to show up at one of my events and they're like, oh, I met this guy, he just kept going, are you a family office? Want to invest in real estate? Family office real estate? They'd be like, dude, that guy's not curious. He just wants to meet people so he can get more money from real estate deals. Whereas if you come in and you go, my passion is people. I want to learn from them, figure out their insights. And from that, I'm going to take this world, which is really challenging, which is real estate, and I'm going to combine that with the world that's super private, which is family office. And I'm going to find the ways that people can learn from each other and not just create generational wealth, but be able to create more affordable housing, sustainable housing, look at building out in different parts of the world where people don't have any of the benefits we have where we live now. If you say something like that, my network opens up because you're saying something that might be self-involved as well, but there's a greater goal from it. So I encourage that, because unless you embrace that as a way to exist in my world or network, there's plenty of other places to go. I am unapologetic. I want that value system and everyone leans into. And I've curated my entire life now. It took a decade to do. So those are the only people around me, and the people who don't, they self-select out. But I gave them an opportunity to rise above themselves and their current nature to do something more for others without seeing people as the other. And they either fall back into their own patterns or they go, I don't know a lot about this space. Who could I learn about it from? Whatever the passion might be. And then they keep on with the curiosity that is absolutely a must for our world to evolve and change.
I love the simplicity because there's a socialization aspect about it. There's like, let me teach you how to be. I feel that, I don't know if you know Sebastian Maniscalco's comedy, but he complains that people didn't get like the human manual. Like, if you can't make it, don't ghost me. Like, just tell me that you cannot make it. Actionable, intentional, impactful. You're like, hey, I can make it. I'll be there. I'm not going to be on my phone. Like all these things that people need to learn. But once you give them that chance, they're either in or either out. And then I read this beautiful book called The Long Game. Dory Clark, I don't know if you've read it. She says,
Dory is a great friend and part of my network for years. So yes.
she's like pinnacle for me. She's so clear. And she says, if it's not a hell yes, if it's not a 9 or a 10, it's a no. It's what you're saying. It's like, don't be tolerant with the maybes, with the 5 or 6 or 7s, where you're like, this doesn't really fit, or this doesn't really. That's how you curate excellence. That's how you get to become like Dory, like you're saying. Like she's top of her game.
Absolutely. And when I sat with Dory, I asked a question that unfortunately Dory rarely gets asked. What does Dory need? You think it's simple, but everyone that has success, fame, fortune, or a focus rarely gets asked what they need, even though we all follow what they're doing. And I have permeated, so to speak, the biggest circles on this planet because of my network by simply trying to figure out what somebody's why is, then how to match them with another why. Because it was intention meeting intention. It's not actually hard to ask it. It's not hard to dig into it. It's not actually that hard to then go, hey, you feel the same as this person. Maybe you should have a conversation, but it's about getting people from different circles to do it. And in many cases, I connect people who are sort of the same, right? So like everyone, when they're like, who do you look like, David Homan? I was like, I don't know. They're like, I think you're a combination of like that guy from Superbad and Jimmy Fallon. And I was like, does that mean I'm like funny or like, what is it? And I was like, but that doesn't mean anything because it's not how I act. And then everyone's like, oh, I have another friend named David who's just like you, because there's lots of curly haired Davids who somehow talk or look like me, but that's meaningless.
Yeah.
What I look
It's
for is somebody
quite
who
funny though.
goes, like, I mean, it is funny, yeah, but like I went for my friend Michael, who introduced me to Dory, who goes, you guys are going to learn a lot from each other. And we have for a deep friendship for a decade and more now, because the intention of how we were connected was we could both learn a lot, and we still do to this day.
I love it. And I love the coming with value first, because the people at the top, I had a meeting yesterday with 3 billionaires, or people that manage $1 billion, like entrusted with billions. And I came home and I told my wife, I was like, today was pretty big for me. It's like, how did I get to talk to these people? Like, why do they want to talk to me? What did I do? I had a little bit of not imposter syndrome, but am I living up to this level? Am I playing like a big boy? Am I bringing enough value? And it took me 10 years or maybe more to realize that you don't come in with a pitch. You don't come in with an ask. You don't come in with, hey, this is what you could do for me. Never. Like you just mentioned, you said, what does Dory need? How can I help you? And how can I give you access? And then that's how you get to these meetings. That's how you can get to talk to people that are at that level. And one thing that does surprise me, and I want to ask your advice, is people at the highest level, they are incredibly intense, deliberate. Not one word, not one gesture, not one discussion was out of place. Like yesterday, I was like, this was an intense day as well, because I noticed they operate at a higher level, which I want to operate to, but I feel I'm not there yet. How did you push yourself to be there at that level, at their level, and be able to deliver value consistently?
So I'll give this outside of my own context, because everyone who talks about how they learned it is justifying what they did. So here's what I'd say. What I learned was from how people reacted to what I said and what actions they took based on what I did. And when you do that over and over and over again, and you can keep perspective, at some point, you figure out how to slightly tweak or modify what you're doing to synthesize how other people see you and what they do with or from the meetings they have with you. So the people at the top of their game, even if they were born with it, a silver spoon, so to speak, there's a constant world trying to tear down the people who are the ones like the ones you're referring to. I am far from that. Maybe with my book and startup, something will get me there, but I'm always going to remain humble because it's not actually what I was after. And so, top of the game, right? There's a lot of risk being at the top of that. There's a weight, there's a responsibility in your choices and your actions that can affect dozens or thousands or millions of people. And the people who do that, who literally are at the top in whatever field they might be, they are masters of the control they can have over their reactions in their life. That doesn't mean they're perfect. I'm sure Mr. Rogers cursed when he was off camera, like the Family Guy makes fun of him for doing. I'm sure that everyone has had their moments, but the people who do this at the very top, they found a way to understand their self-worth isn't based on what people think of them. It's what people do with them, and they try to maintain that for profit, for purpose, for 1,000 different reasons.
I will rewatch. This has been one of the best podcasts. Honestly, learned so much from you, and I will rewatch this part because I think it's you subtly said so much, but there's a lot there to unpack. You need to that intentionality. I think it's you have to learn it as well, and I think I like what you said. Like everybody's just gonna say what they did, and that's how they learned it, but it's not really true. How can you, or let's say, what is a skill that you would teach an entrepreneur, someone that's just starting out, about relationships, about connecting with people, or getting involved with our community?
So, entrepreneurs in particular, they have their heads down to scale what they're doing, avoiding their life to do so in many ways, avoiding their mental health. And I've learned that unless you love the journey as you do it and you find balance, you'll never be happy when you get there because you weren't happy getting there. So when people start, yes, it might be incredibly hard and the odds are against you. You have to start in a way that you can always convey that longer vision than what you need at the moment. And whatever people come into to become a leader, because most people building something become leaders, whether they're right to lead or not, you have to go back to the demons that you faced when you were younger and you have to face them and find a way to have strength from it because everyone has some, right? I didn't want to give you an example for me of in terms of leadership, but I'll say it now in this context, right? So I thought by the time I finished 5th grade, I might be an all-star pitcher. I was pretty good at soccer as a fullback. I was a great pitcher. And between 5th and 6th grade, I got horribly sick. And I was so sick that for most of my 6th grade, I was in and out of school, in and out of a hospital. My mother hates when I say we call it the year I died, but like that's what it felt like. That still haunts me to this day. And I felt like I never belonged any circle I was in because I lost that social dynamic of smaller elementary into bigger middle. And like I never felt I fit in anywhere. And then I realized that the skills I built to try to fit in were all the superpowers of what makes somebody a super connector. Fitting in nowhere, but fitting in everywhere, because how you approach every new diverse circle. And I wasn't alone in it. I had to be vulnerable enough to share it. And I found everyone else telling me a different story than mine that came to that same conclusion. And anyone at the top of their game or the beginning of what they're aspiring to do, you have to understand that where you come from and what you do is not an excuse for how you act and how you lead, and that we all have to embrace each of our unique circumstances in such a way that we not just own it, but we've figured out what makes us strong from it and what makes us vulnerable, which gives us a better way to connect with others, to share in success together. It's self-work. You don't just inherit it. You don't just learn it. You have to work through it constantly in order to have the right resilience mindset to actually succeed.
You mentioned vulnerability many times, and I understand that in a world where it's like, look at my muscles, look at my money, look at how much I travel, look at all this stuff I do. You are saying vulnerability many times. Why do you think we why do you think that is so key? Why do we need to be more vulnerable? Probably you're practically saying we should be more vulnerable so that more things come to us.
100%. So let me give you one of the most impactful stories my network ever delivered, which is in my book. So now I know I have permission, I can share it. So think about everyone who rooted for the Eagles when they won their first Super Bowl, right? Strength, power, go Philly. They won, right? They finally won. One of my friends who's in my network, who's quoted in my book, was on that team. The same time the Eagles won, one of my best friend's fathers passed away in India. He never knew his team he rooted for to win his entire life won. He had a heart attack. He died. And my friend was in Jersey where he lives. He got the call, flew to get his father to then bury him. The hardest moment of his life was a lot of people's rah-rah moment, go Eagles, for the first time they won. And then my friend Jonathan heard that story because I was shaken up. This is my daughter's best friend from when my daughter was born. Her dad is one of my best friends and on my startup board. And I told Jonathan this, who told his business partner and close friend Naji this. Naji went to the entire team and he said, I got to tell you guys a story. This is a few days after they won the Super Bowl. And Naji said, one of my best friend's close friend's friend, multiple chain, lost his father. But I feel now that I've learned about this man, Kieran, that his spirit was watching over us when we won. And they all signed a football. They all signed a poster with real incredible sentiments, thinking this wasn't about winning, but which of their dads weren't there to watch them win? What would have happened if their parents weren't there to celebrate that? Star athletes, massive gods among men, vulnerable in that moment, thinking about that was the strength, and therefore their act of generosity was different. Vulnerability is one of the most important things we have to build connection. Everyone has a crappy day. Everyone has an ailing relative or a parent that is losing their mind. Everyone has lost something. Why is it so hard to start with that when we build connection? Why do we have to posture and look the best and sound the best and put out the best of ourselves when we were all afraid? We are all scared. We all have inferiority. And we are all in a world where it's so hard to get up and make the best of every day without anyone else but you knowing what your life is actually like. And it's really just not that hard to embrace it that way. It's just really hard to fear people's reaction, and that's what stops people from it. But I would rather work through fearing that reaction than work through a life of isolation and loneliness where I was never understood. So that's why I make it key in everything I talk about. Because everyone I've told about possibly having a chronic illness and nearly dying as a child, my God, the floodgates open of everyone else or their friend or those who lost their family. How many people go, my childhood was brilliant and perfect. I became an all-star pitcher and now I'm famous. And then I died. No one cares. We care about that shared humanity. It's why it's part of my mission to connect people around.
It took probably, I don't know what episode this is of my podcast, probably 100 or something, to make me cry. Really, really touching story, and so powerful. I recently thought, why do people take pictures only when they win? I think people should take pictures when they're suffering too, because that way you can see that day and how far you've come as well. not only when you were high and now that you're not that good anymore. So it's like this dysmorphia that has caused everybody to feel insecure, inferior. But really, that bottom portion is also part of our strength because you're already past it. You couldn't tell the story that you were sick if you weren't here. That's why it's like but you're no longer there. So that's why it's like so powerful, because you overcame that. And that taught you things, and that gave you strength, and that gave you depth, knowledge. Incredible. I can't thank you enough for coming. I can't wait until your book comes out, and I hope and I don't hope, we will meet in person, because I think we have a lot of things in common, and I definitely want to meet you and shake your hand, because this was one of the greatest podcasts I've done. Thank you for teaching everything that you gave me today, and for what you've created.
Well, I'm honored. I appreciate your outreach and this opportunity. So I thank you, and I thank everyone for listening.
And I will definitely put all your connections, how to reach out to you and follow you, and hopefully when your book comes out, they can buy it. I will buy it. Count me in, because I think that you have a lot of stories that can teach important things that we need to be aware of. So anything else that you would like to say before we finish?
The thing I'd say, and this is the thing that I think we'll end with, given the sentiments we just both went through, without having us have time for you to share from your own vulnerability what really triggered you with this. If anyone were to listen to this and be struck by it, call up somebody who you should express gratitude for and tell them something vulnerable and see if they want to share back. It doesn't take that much to start the ripple, but from those cycles of gratitude and generosity, we can feel like the world we're currently in is temporary, and the world we want our children to inherit will be better. And none of that is really lost. It just takes the power of community to achieve it.
Great way to end. And definitely we'll end this podcast. I'll call someone that I need to say thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for having me on, Ahmad.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure having you.